Well, Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, and Kasparian. All right, lots of giant news for you guys. Have you guys heard about the tax returns? Jeez, Lord mercy. We're going to talk about that. Have you heard about his former campaign manager nearly killing himself? We're going to talk about that. We got new video on that, how cops handled it. They tackled him. We have that. We have so many amazing stories for you guys. Okay, you know what else we have? Tomorrow, Skittles. The first presidential debate is tomorrow. Like, what the heck? There's so much news going on that it's almost unbelievable that we're already at the presidential debate. So 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern. Where are you coming? You're coming right here. Everybody knows that, okay? Me, Anna, and John are covering debate. Michael Schur's on location, okay? So will he get some Trump surrogates? Will they be sane and not high? I don't know, okay? But he'll probably get some folks, okay? So it's gonna be great coverage. We'll watch the debate together, and then we'll do the analysis right after. It's on all the platforms that we're normally on: Roku, Zumo, Pluto TV, Comcast, Samsung, so many others. You get YouTube TV, Facebook, you got it. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's get to the stories right away. Anna, what's up?
All right. Well, over the weekend, legacy media outlets were reporting on a huge breaking news story. In fact, the type of breaking news story they typically don't like to cover. An incredibly wealthy person hasn't been paying his taxes. Donald Trump's tax returns were obtained by the New York Times, nearly 2 decades worth of his taxes. And based on what we know from the reporting, if there is an actual investigation into some of the deductions he's taken, there could have been possible crimes committed. Now, based on what we know from the reporting so far, there are some sketchy details about what he's filed in his taxes. And if these deductions are not protected under tax law, well, then he's committed crimes. Now, let me give you some highlights, some details, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. So the main takeaway from the story, something that you're likely to have seen already, but just in case, is the fact that Trump paid just $750 in federal income taxes the year he won the presidency, so in 2016. In his first year in the White House, he paid another $750. He had paid no income taxes at all in 10 of the previous 15 years, largely because he reported losing much more money than he made. Now, he bragged quite a bit about how he's this billionaire and he's a successful billionaire, this and that. So based on what we know from this reporting, either one of two things can be true or both things can be true. Number one, he's incredibly incompetent and continues to just bleed money and isn't actually wealthy when you consider his liabilities versus his income. Number two, he could be completely lying about some of the deductions that he's taking. He might be taking unlawful deductions. And if that's the case, he's breaking the law, he's committing tax crimes. But more importantly, this is the kind of stuff that in some cases is protected by tax law, which allows major corporations, for instance, like Amazon, to get away with paying nothing in taxes. Again, there needs to be a thorough investigation into this, but let me give you more details. Hanging over him, we learned through this reporting, is a decade-long audit battle with the Internal Revenue Service over the legitimacy of a $72.9 million tax refund that he claimed and received. He received a tax refund of $72.9 million. After declaring huge losses, an adverse ruling could cost him more than $100 million. So we've all heard about the audit that Donald Trump is undergoing. He cited the audit as the reason for why he didn't want to release his taxes, even though there's no law preventing him from releasing his taxes, even if he's being audited. And so now through this reporting, we find out that he has this massive tax liability if this audit shows that he unlawfully declared these deductions. Cenk.
Yeah, so first of all, understand that there's two different issues here. One is it okay to take deductions at all? And the answer to that is definitely. So if you are losing money, that is your expenses, and the reason you can't claim any taxes is because you didn't make any profit. That's normal. And does Trump have some of that? Yes, he actually has a lot of that because he's totally and utterly incompetent.
literally everything he runs, with the brief exception of Mar-a-Lago while he's president, which has greatly increased its rates, has lost money. Literally everything he's ever done in his life that he has managed has lost money. So it's not just an accounting gimmick, like, oh, it's the rich avoiding their taxes. No, he's actually a terrible, terrible businessman that cannot make money. Now, that's half the story, but the other half is what Anna's talking about here. On top of that, he appears to be doing tax evasion. So and that's the part that can get him in criminal trouble. I guarantee you that if you did 10% of what Donald Trump has done, you would be in massive criminal trouble. So, I mean, taking $72 million that you shouldn't have taken from the IRS is insanity. And any other rich people, look, some of them probably do, they all do, not all, but a lot of them do tons of tax avoidance, which is already a huge problem in our system. That's why the system has to be changed. And honestly, even Democrats help them avoid taxes because they're their donors. But then there's tax evasion, which is a separate issue, which is a crime. So if you claim things that are not really business expenses, you do it on purpose, you claim things that you should not claim, that is against the law. And it appears that Donald Trump did that on a number of occasions.
Yes, exactly. So I also want to remind you all of some of Michael Cohen's testimony, because he did testify before Congress in February of 2019. And during that testimony, Cohen recalled Trump showing him a huge check from the US Treasury some years earlier and musing that he could not believe how stupid the government was for giving someone like him that much money back. Also, let me note that there seems to be some inconsistencies between his public disclosures and what he noted in his taxes. For instance, in 2018, Trump announced in his disclosure that he made at least $434.9 million. The tax records deliver a very different portrait of his bottom line, $47.4 million in losses. So that should be something that gets investigated and looked into. And one other thing that Michael Cohen said during his testimony before the House was what you're about to watch during AOC's line of questioning. Take a look.
Mr. Cohen, I want to ask you about your assertion that the president may have improperly devalued his assets to avoid paying taxes. According to an August 21st, 2016 report by the Washington Post, while the president claimed in financial disclosure forms that Trump National Golf Club in Jupiter, Florida, was worth more than $50 million, he had reported otherwise to local tax authorities that the course was worth, quote, no more than $5 million. Mr. Cohen, do you know whether this specific report is accurate?
It's identical to what he did at Trump National Golf Club at Briarcliff Manor.
Do you know, to your knowledge, was the president interested in reducing his local real estate bills, tax bills?
Yes.
And how did he do that?
What you do is you deflate the value of the asset, and then you put in a request to the tax department for a deduction.
During the same testimony, Michael Cohen also mentioned that Donald Trump likes to inflate his assets in order to tap into loans that he has no business qualifying for.
So when it comes to these issues, there are, again, several different ways of looking at it. Number one, on the issue of if you can prove that he inflated his asset value to get loans and deflated their value for the IRS, clearly a crime. If you did it, guaranteed you'd go to prison, guaranteed. So we have a question: do we have a real justice system in America, or are the rich and powerful allowed to get away with everything? I mean, the guy is already paying $750 a year in taxes when he claims. Now, remember, his claim is he has $10 billion. A guy who has $10 million paying $750 in taxes. I mean, I would be shocked if you paid less. If you paid, less than $750. I mean, we almost all paid way more than $750, right? So there's that inequity, but of the justice system. But if the justice system was actually fair, there's no question that prosecutors would go after Donald Trump on those issues. Then there's a question of where are the loans coming from, and could that then create more problems? So we've got three different buckets here. One is unknown, and that's a very interesting bucket. So if you see his taxes, you don't necessarily see where the loans are coming from. That would be in other documents. And so people have a lot of questions, including Nancy Pelosi today said, what if it's a foreign government? And our president owes hundreds of millions of dollars to a foreign government. Could they use that as leverage against them? It's a rare point that I agree with Nancy Pelosi on. And if you could ever use leverage on someone that cares about money, that would be Donald Trump. I mean, no one cares more about money. He says it over and over and over again. I don't want to hold it against him that he's so dead broken, so poor and poverty stricken. He might literally be homeless once he leaves the White House. But if they have leverage over him, that's fair. Second bucket is Ladder. It's a company that people use because they're a lender of last resort. So when you're a loser like Donald Trump and you've already declared bankruptcy 6 different times and nobody else will touch you because you're toxic, you go to Ladder and pay much higher rates because they're willing to do riskier things. But now the problem is he's president, right? Some of those loans are coming due as soon as he's out of office. We'll talk more about that later. But are they going to foreclose on the president? Are they going to evict him from the White House? No, the White House is not his and they can't evict him. But that's another set of problems for Donald Trump. But at least those are not legal problems, okay? Now, you turn to Deutsche Bank. That's a third bucket. That's where a lot of his loans originate. And that is where things are super weird. So now look, I don't, and I'm saying this very, very literally, okay? I don't know that these are in any way connected, but a Deutsche Bank executive that had left a suicide note of "I'm so sorry for all the terrible things I did at Deutsche Bank," basically committed suicide in 2014. Trump was not yet president, but was clearly him and Russian oligarchs and many others were Deutsche Bank clients at that time. And then just last year, the executive in charge of okaying Donald Trump's loans also committed suicide at the age of 55. Now, there are family members who are concerned about that, and the timing of it is pretty stunning. So I have no idea if they're connected, but two high-profile Deutsche Bank executives, including the one in charge of Trump's loans, both commit suicide in their mid-50s. So, and right now prosecutors are looking into Deutsche Bank. They might find nothing. It might have been that the first guy was not at all related to Trump. It might have been related to LIBOR. And again, I'm being very literal. It's not like wink, wink. No, it really might have been related to other scandals that Deutsche Bank were doing. And the second suicide might have been personal. We have no idea. But prosecutors are looking into that. And so to see what the situation is, whether it's related to Trump or not related to Trump. But there is a giant cloud hanging over Deutsche Bank. So that is more issues potentially for Donald Trump.
Okay, so there are other potential issues based on what we've learned through this reporting. So for instance, he will deduct administrative costs related to his business. And if you really look into it, some of these administrative costs seem to be inflated. So for instance, tax records do not have the specificity to evaluate the legitimacy of every business expense Trump claims to reduce his taxable income. For instance, without any explanation in his returns, the general and administrative expenses at his Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey increased 5-fold from 2016 to 2017. So for administrative costs to go up 5 times, 5-fold in the span of 1 year, I think is a little weird, right? So there's that. And then the final thing is, you mentioned it a little bit, Cenk, but some of his business dealings outside the United States, not because making money outside of the United States is legal in and of itself, but because of how he could be using his office of the presidency to enrich himself, enrich his personal businesses. That is a problem. That is a violation of the emoluments clause in our Constitution. But That's the one issue where I think even if it's proven and there's like indisputable evidence that he's been violating the emoluments clause, keep in mind that Donald Trump has a lot to gain from ensuring that the Supreme Court is, skewed in his favor. And I just don't think he's ever gonna face any consequences for that whatsoever. For tax fraud, will he? I don't know. I've kind of learned my lesson about holding out hope that there's ever going to be any justice in regard to Donald Trump. I mean, he has succeeded in defunding the IRS to the point where they only audit people living in poverty, people who barely make any money, people who are wealthy like Donald Trump barely get investigated. And while he's undergoing an audit, I mean, how long does an audit last? I don't really get it. So there's a huge conflict of interest while he's president of the United States, facing this massive audit for potentially committing massive tax fraud. Think about how much influence and sway he has over the IRS, how it gets funded, how it gets dismantled. I don't mean to be a downer. I just think if you guys think there's gonna be some consequence for him, just don't hold your breath. That's where I'm at with this story.
No, I hear you, Anna. You have excellent reasons why. So number one, if he wins re-election, good night, Irene. Ain't nobody gonna come after him for emoluments clause. What the Democrats are? No, they're gonna hide in a cave for 4 years. They're gonna be so scared, and they'll have blown another election to him. No, he will get away with everything if he wins re-election. If he loses re-election, the first thing Joe Biden's gonna do is say, "We look forward, not backward. I swear to God, I'll never go after Donald Trump," because that's how Democrats roll. So I know all of that. So I'm not holding my breath for any of that. But I'm going to throw one more wild card, specifically about his foreign entanglements. Remember, a lot of those governments are not exactly good guys, okay? Whether it's Putin or Erdogan or Duterte. And so they gave him huge licensing fees. Now, some before he was president, some during his presidency. And licensing fees, as I've told you on the Young Turks before, are super easy to play around with because they're intangible value of his name. They're paying for his name. So they could make it really high, they could make it really low, or they could stop it altogether. They could threaten to stop it altogether if he doesn't play ball. So if those governments don't turn over any tapes and we don't have any tapes of Trump having very frank conversations about it, then he'll get away with it. But is it possible just to mess with him based on broken promises, mess with America, et cetera, that one of those authoritarian leaders at a later date goes, "Oh, by the way, here's your clown ass president that we bought for $500,000. And they release the tapes and then he's screwed. So that's at least possible. And that would probably on that issue be the only way that they get it.
We're gonna take a quick break, but we're not done with this tax story yet. When we come back, we're gonna discuss why Trump is likely to wanna stay in power, why he's so desperate to stay in power, and how the answer is tied to what we've learned through his taxes. We'll be right back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, back on the Young Turks. You guys have too many good comments. Let's go to them right away. In the member section, Jess writes in, So please, Trump, tell us again how the New York Times reporting is at the same time both fake news and illegally obtained. Excellent point. Which one is it? Is it fake or is it real, but they obtained it in the wrong way? Of course it's real. Gabby Marita says right-wingers have a term for someone who refuses to pay taxes while at the same time cheats the government out of money they don't deserve. A welfare queen. Hashtag Looter Donald is a welfare queen. I like hashtag Looter Donald a lot. LMG15 says Trump has a reverse Midas touch and America is on track to be a 7th bankruptcy. That's also very right. Here's new members on YouTube, and you can click the join button below the video to become a member as well. Janika Elaine, Luis Garcia Zapatero, Michael Robinson, Gerald O'Brien, Margaret Spellin, Mark Sarnow, Rick J just upgraded, Steve McLean, Hoshi Reed, Anna Garcia, Jacqueline Yuthoff, Hordor, that's my favorite, Chris Boych, and Mike Charleboys. And I have time to read just 2 more from YouTube Super Chat. Omega says, Cenk, I came out too harsh and I humbly apologize. I'm a nobody with infinite ideas and zero charisma. You, Anna, and TYT are true heroes, but lives and freedom are at stake and I can't prove myself in 270 characters. Omega, I love your brother. Nobody's a zero. We're all together, make up the Young Turks, okay? So hang in there. And I'm sorry I don't have time to spend with every single viewer, of course, right? But I'm reading all your comments and I appreciate all that you've done. Lonely Soul writes in, too strong, Democratic Party is a ghost ship and it's time to take it over. I love that, obviously, which actually leads perfectly into our sponsor, Too Strong Coffee, is doing giveaways. They're actually giving away coffee, free coffee for a whole year. And apparently tomorrow is International Coffee Day. We'll talk about it again tomorrow. But the way to win it is to go TooStrongCoffee.com/win. TooStrongCoffee.com/win. And it's organic, it's fair trade. It gives to progressive causes. And if you go to that website, it'll show you how to win free coffee for the whole year, which actually is a really good value. All right, thank you guys. Anna, what's next?
All right, so we have another angle to talk about Trump's tax cuts from, or I should say tax avoidance. And it has to do with why he's so desperate to stay in power. So based on new reporting by the New York Times, following the fact that they obtained nearly 2 decades worth of Donald Trump's tax returns, we're getting a clearer picture as to why Donald Trump, who doesn't seem to enjoy leading the country, is so desperate to remain in power. It might just be that he's power hungry and crazy, but I think it also has a lot to do with the fact that while in power, he has some sway over so many different parts of his financial life, including an IRS audit that he's currently undergoing, and also, if he's not in power, he can't use his position of power in order to violate the emoluments clause and financially enrich himself and his companies. So the New York Times found that records show that starting in 2010, Donald Trump claimed and received an income tax refund totaling $72.9 million. All the federal income tax he had paid for 2009 through 2008, plus interest. The legitimacy of that refund is at the center of the audit battle that he has long been waging out of the public view with the IRS. So he might have to pay a ton of money pretty soon if he's found guilty in that tax audit of committing tax fraud and deducting things that he should not have deducted. For instance, his revenue from The Apprentice and from licensing deals is drying up. And several years ago, he sold nearly all the stocks that now might have helped him plug holes in his struggling properties. Within the next 4 years, more than $300 million in loans, obligations for which he's personally responsible for, will come due, right? So he's got this tax audit situation. He's got an insane amount of debt that is going to be due to his debtors very, very soon. And staying in power could help him influence how this all plays out for him. I have more details, including just one more graphic for you, Cenk, because I think it's really important. When it comes to the money that he's made through The Apprentice, I mean, it's kind of amazing. Remember, he inherited more than $413 million from his daddy, okay? He also went bankrupt 6 different times. But that's not the end of it. We've also learned through this reporting how much money he made from The Apprentice, which is Just go back and watch that show. It like blows my mind that he's made this kind of money off of that awful show. But The Apprentice, along with licensing and endorsement deals that flowed from his expanding celebrity, brought Trump a total of $427.4 million. He invested much of that in a collection of businesses, mostly golf courses, that in the years since have steadily devoured cash, much as the money he secretly received from his father financed a spree of overspending that led to his collapse in the early 1990s. So through, enriching himself through the office of the presidency, he's able to make up for the loss of income that he used to receive from The Apprentice. So he is using this position of power to make money, and that could be very relevant, especially when you consider this giant amount of debt that will come due very soon, $300 million worth of debt.
It's actually a little bit more than that. So let me break it down in this couple of ways. So first of all, there's the myth of meritocracy in America, and I believe there is some meritocracy, but the mythology is that if you are rich, that means by definition you merit that wealth. Now understand that Donald Trump, as Anna explained to you, got $413 million from his daddy and blew it all. He lost it all in 6 different bankruptcies. Then he basically inherited $420 some odd million from Jeff Zucker, who's the current head of CNN, but at the time was head of the NBC and gave him The Apprentice show. And then he blew that $400 million. So if you did not burn through $800 million, you're an infinitely better businessman than Donald Trump. When the dust settles, I think there's an excellent chance that he'll be considered literally the worst businessman in American history. So almost no project that he himself manages has ever made money. It's incredible. Statistically, a monkey would do better. 25% of the time, they'd be like, they just move things around in a way where they'd get lucky, right? Trump is so incompetent that everything he touches is, as one of our members just says, I think it was Gabby Marita, tyt.com/join to become a member, just said he's got reverse Midas touch. Everything he touched turns to crap. So, and as I look through all the details, guys, I mean, I run a business here. God help us. It's a small business. It's powered by you guys, but at least we've stayed afloat for 18 years. And so I know what P&Ls look like. I know what spreadsheets, et cetera, and how you've got to do to actually run the core of a business. And as I looked at those numbers, I thought, why didn't he just cut his losses? Every year he loses money, a stunning amount of money. He's lost 150 million, no, over 3. I'm sorry, I got the 55 million from the Trump Hotel in DC. 315 million from the golf courses. But to me, as I saw year after year, like 25 million, 50 million, 15 million, 35 million, all losses, I kept thinking, sell it, just sell it. Why do you keep losing money? You're the worst businessman in the world. So because of all of that, he now has $421 million in loans that are coming due. And they're coming due at different times. On top of that, he has a $72 million that he owes the US government. Now, right now, the IRS seems to have that case on pause because he's literally their boss. Okay, but the minute he steps out of office, the US government's gonna say, you owe us 72 million, which you haven't paid now in almost 8 years. You robbed us that long ago. By the way, when you rob the US government, who do you rob? You rob all of us. The American taxpayers put that money in. Trump took out 72 million he shouldn't have taken out and bragged about it. Michael Cohen's on record several times saying, yeah, he thought the IRS and basically taxpayers were schmucks for ever giving him that money. And then on top of that, he's got $100 million loan coming due in 2022 that he couldn't possibly pay. So when you put all of it together over the next 4 years, he's got about $500 million in loans and penalties that are coming due. By the way, the 72 million, once you add the interest, comes out to about 100 million. He just doesn't have the money. He's broke. A friend of mine texted me today and said, Cenk, you've never been more right than when you did that loser Donald segment about Trump before the 2016 elections. Remember, we did 100 days in a row, and I showed you what a terrible, terrible businessman he was. And I realize now, people thought, oh, you're biased. You're trying to get him to lose. No, I was just accurately reporting how terrible he is in business even before we saw the recent numbers. Already so much of it was public. The 6 bankruptcies, the casinos he trashed, the airlines, everything he touched, he ruined. So guys, that's why he's in a cold sweat panic. It's not that he's worried about getting arrested. Democrats couldn't arrest Ted Bundy. They couldn't arrest Dahmer. Okay, they're the most incompetent people you've ever met. And he's not worried. I don't think he's worried so much about losing power because he never intended to become president in the first place. It turns out he's worried the minute he loses the power of the presidency, it affects his finances and he'll be dead broke and humiliated. That's why he's trying to hold on to power desperately.
Right, and also, again, while he's in power, he makes a lot of money by funneling, business toward his companies. We're seeing some of the specific numbers. For instance, this is a long graphic, but it gives you details into how much money goes toward his businesses simply because he is president. At the Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach, Florida, for instance, there was a flood of new members starting in 2015, and that allowed him to pocket an additional $5 million a year from the business. And remember, people were trying to become members of Mar-a-Lago in order to have influence over Trump. I mean, Trump's there all the time. And so if you want face-to-face interaction with Trump and you want to lobby or influence him in some way, it's an easy way to do it. At his Doral Golf Resort near Miami, the roofing materials manufacturer GAF spent at least $1.5 million in 2018, even as its industry was lobbying the Trump administration to roll back egregious federal regulations. They refer to it as egregious, of course. In 2017, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association paid at least $397,602 to the Washington Hotel, where the group held at least one event during its 4-day World Summit in defense of persecuted Christians. And then finally, here's some more numbers for you. When he took office, Trump said that he would pursue no new foreign deals as president. Even so, in his first 2 years in the White House, his revenue from abroad totaled $73 million. And while much of that money was from his golf properties in Scotland and Ireland, some came from licensing deals in countries with authoritarian-leaning leaders or thorny geopolitics. For example, $3 million from the Philippines, $2.3 million from India, and $1 million from Turkey. So look, you're the president of the United States and you're still very much vested in the best interests of your own businesses. And so you're going to use that powerful position to funnel money to your organizations and to your companies. This is, it's not what the president is supposed to do. He's supposed to be a public servant, but Trump has done the exact opposite. He has not served as a public servant. I think the more than 200,000 Americans who are dead today as a result of his incompetence and lack of leadership with regard to the pandemic is just one piece of evidence to that.
Yeah, so he's got loans from a couple of different places, including this company called Ladder, which is a lender of last resort for people who are out of options because they're toxic, because they can't run a business. And so when he gets out of office, companies like Ladder are not soft. They will come in and go, yes, we're now, if you've ever played Monopoly, it's actually pretty close to that. If you don't have the money, which he most certainly does not, we will now take control of your properties. So they're gone. And so he'll have to sell potentially Mar-a-Lago and the others to try to pay his bills and still not have enough money. Meg wrote in, Cenk, if he's answering my question, and why doesn't he just sell the stuff? And if he has to sell it later under duress, he's gonna get even a lower number. Meg said, Cenk, if he sold the golf courses in his name, then his name would get taken off the front of them. He's that much of a child. Meg, oh my God, I think you're right. I think that is what's happening. So by the way, tyt.com/join to become a member. Or you could do what these folks just did. You could hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. That's Xavier Lee, Jesse Tapia, Aaron Walker, and Rulian Estevaletti. Thank you guys for all just joining up right now. But at the end of the day, I can't see a way that he wouldn't be broke. He got bailed out by Deutsche Bank once before. He appears to have gotten bailed out by the Russians, according to his sons, who said that they got the money from the Russians for the golf courses. But now under this giant spotlight, I mean, if he loses the presidency, it would be shocking if anyone else ever gave him a loan again. And if you're out of loans, you got to break up your hotels and your properties. You got to sell them off at reduced prices. And he's in more trouble than you could possibly imagine because he just cannot make money. And the most important part, the Apprentice money has run dry. So he made money on that by appearing on it for 14 seasons and getting the licensing off of that. But that money's almost all out now. And that leads to the final point here. There's no one in the country that helped Donald Trump become president more than Jeff Zucker. This story absolutely shows that. If it wasn't for the $420 some odd million he made from The Apprentice, he would have been broke, I guess now 16 years ago. Dead broke, totally humiliated. They would have called his loans at that point. It's The Apprentice that kept him in business. And Jeff Zucker, at the time ran NBC, started Apprentice, gave Donald Trump this money through hiring him to be a host. And then at CNN, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, a story came out where there was tapes of Zucker talking to Michael Cohen, who was Trump's lawyer at the time, saying, now here's how I can help Donald Trump win the debate on CNN. And remember, if he loses, I want to do a TV deal with him. So the head of CNN was helping Trump all along and gave him hundreds of millions of dollars in basically free media advertising back in 2016. And if it wasn't for that 400 million, he would have been a goner. So Jeff Zucker, that he now calls fake news, actually is his second daddy. If it weren't for his two daddies, he never would have made a single dollar and he'd probably be homeless right now.
Let's take our final break. When we come back, we have more news for you and you don't want to miss it. We'll see you then.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
All right, back on the Young Turks. So first of all, thank you to our sponsor, Aspiration. Unlike the dirty banks, they're a clean, progressive financial institution. Put your money where your heart is. Aspiration.com/TYT. Did I just make up that slogan? Yes. Burrito Bandito writes in the member section, TYT should ask Deutsche Bank for a loan. No, Deutsche Bank used to be, this is a German bank, used to be a very legitimate bank. They've totally ruined their reputation by dealing with all these thugs and criminals and oligarchs and drug lords, etc. So no, they're not gonna give us a loan. We don't do anything criminal. TYT.com/go is our only hope. And it's a good hope, it's a wonderful hope. Let's see the thermometer, which we haven't seen in a while. We're near the end of this month, guys. And again, this month, it looks like we're probably not gonna make it. It's 90,000, we're trying to get to 200,000 by the end of each month. Miraculously, we made it every month. This is just 10% of what billionaires give PragerU as an example. If we get to 200,000, if you can help at TYT.com/go would be amazing. Thank you. Megan Lay 1 writes in the member section, currently watching you guys and simultaneously on hold with the IRS because they've held mine and my husband's refund since March. If only I were a millionaire. Unfortunately, exactly right. And then 2 new members on YouTube, Pamela Charshi and Moist Toilettes. So that's funny. Hit the join button below on YouTube if you want to join. Nikki Dearest Gogo says, I would any chance of getting hashtag 2strongcoffee in biodegradable K-Pods? That would be fabulous. Love you guys. TYT gives me hope in these dark days. Not yet, but we are actually working on it, and we're trying to be as progressive as possible. That's why it's organic, it's fair trade. After the second bag, it gives money to progressive causes like Just Democrats and Wolfpack. After the third bag, you get this mug, 2strongcoffee.com/TYT. But actually go to 2strongcoffee.com/win. For the next couple of days, because you could also win a year's worth of free coffee. So please check that out. And I want to give a shout out to Twitch, where Tails420 gifted 10 subs. That's their 90th gift. OB Mom's a legend at 803 gifted subs to the channel. And lastly, Lieutenant McGee donated 800 bits for quote Anna because she rocks. You can share with Cenk, he wrote. Okay, so back to the person who rocks.
Thank you. Thank you. I enjoy your bits. All right, so let's talk about the Supreme Court. So, Democrats really don't get enough credit for the things they're really, really good at, like how they're good at failing at messaging or losing. And I think what's happening with the Supreme Court right now, and the Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, is a perfect example of that. Now, keep in mind that Democrats have avoided talking about this rigged economic system we're living under because they're basically funded by the same corporate donors as Republicans. So instead, they've shifted 100% of their messaging toward identity politics. It's just the truth. It just is. And so since everything they do hinges on identity politics, they're in a bit of a pickle with Amy Coney Barrett, a woman who is successful and has 7 kids, one of whom I should say, was adopted from Haiti, and the other has Down syndrome. So what are Democrats gonna do to attack her? Are they gonna attack her religion? Are they gonna attack her because she has so many children? That's not gonna play so well. And so this video emerged over the weekend. An NBC News reporter tweeted it, and you see her coming out of her home with all her kids. And not just one, many Republicans on Twitter, including the one I'm about to share with you, tweeted this: good luck, Democrats. Because again, they really can't focus on identity politics here, because in terms of identity politics, she appears to be squeaky clean. And again, you might have problems with her religion, but attacking her religion is a loser, right? So, now we're hearing that Senate Democrats recognize the danger. A top Democratic strategist pointed to 3 pitfalls: liberals mishandling this by boycotting or treating her with disrespect; Senator Dianne Feinstein, top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, screwing it up, which she's also very, very good at; and someone looking like a religious bigot. So they're stuck. They don't know what to do. And to be quite honest with you, the procedural methods that they have to try to delay a vote on Amy Coney Barrett won't go far enough in preventing her from getting confirmed. There's been some talk about boycotting the confirmation hearing. That's just gonna speed up the process. That means Republicans are just gonna vote yes, and you guys are done. So they've bungled everything. And it's not just, you can't just take this as an isolated instance, right? They bungled it with decades of poor decisions, and those poor decisions were funded by corporate donors who want them to focus on issues that matter to some extent. There's no question, like what issues of racism, sexism, homophobia, those issues matter. But if those are the only issues that you focus on, identity related issues, and you allow financial crimes to go by the wayside, corruption to go by the wayside, all of the other issues that Amy Coney Barrett has because she's a pro-corporate judge, well then you don't really have anything to attack her on, because you're not allowed to attack the fact that she's going to side with corporations over average Americans over and over again, just like all the other corporate judges that have been appointed by Republicans.
Okay, so let me tell you the things that are not going to work, and then I want to be realistic with you guys about what the options they have are, and then tell you why they're not going to do them. So first of all, the things that aren't going to work are boycotting so that none of the Democrats show up in the hearings. How does that make any sense? Will that slow it down? No, it's just oh yeah, we're just not gonna dignify the process. Totally, utterly useless. I don't know who came up with that ridiculous idea. No, in fact, it'll make it go quicker. I'm not interested in your theatrics. I'm interested in you actually stopping her from getting on the court. Secondly, apparently some people are talking about her family. I don't even understand the point. By the way, she has 2 kids she adopted from Haiti. So the whole point of being pro-choice is you get to choose how big or small your family is. So that's bizarre. So don't get into her family. That's dumb. Okay. Now on to things that actually could work. First of all, they say that there's nothing we can do. Dick Durbin said we could slow it down, perhaps hours, maybe days at most. Okay, so he's ready to surrender. I'm going to get to his second quote in a second. That's not true. I laid out for you guys last week 5 different things that could significantly slow down the process, if not stop it altogether. But so far, Democrats have taken 4 out of those 5 options off the table already. And now they're saying basically the 5th option where we slow things down, we're not even gonna do that. They're just such losers. And what drives me crazy about the rest of the media is now they're all dutifully reporting, just like I told you on day 1, there's nothing they can do. That's not true. There's 5 procedures they can do. They're choosing not to do them. And then, so then Durbin says, but we can't stop the outcome. What we should do is to address this now respectfully. In other words, lose with civility. I loathe these Democrats. I can't stand them. He's the number 2 Democrat in the Senate. They're gonna lose respectfully. By the way, what good would it do to delay it by a couple of days? Do you know when right now the current schedule, which is the fastest that the Republicans could possibly go, has them taking a full vote of the Senate on October 26th. That's only a week before the elections. Could you delay it by a week doing the procedures I laid out last week? Absolutely. But they're cowards and feckless and they're the worst. So they're not gonna do any of that. And will they challenge her on Citizens United? She's gonna make Citizens United permanent. The country despises Citizens United. Nope, they're gonna lay down like dogs, because they are dogs to their donors. They're not even gonna fight on that issue. So, and then finally, look, on this religion issue, no, don't go and attack her for being Catholic. That doesn't make any sense. And the Republicans with their false thing about, oh my God, how could a Catholic suffer all this kind of bigotry and discrimination? They just don't want any Catholics on the Supreme Court. She would be the 6th Catholic on the Supreme Court. And Gorsuch was raised a Catholic, so it's possible that it would be 7 out of the 9 justices that are Catholic. So what discrimination are you guys talking about? On which planet? What, do you want 9 out of 9 to be Catholic? That's insane. But yes, I would ask her, she literally has a handmaid. They changed the name recently, but that is what it is. And according to her sect, she is supposed to ask her for advice on all decisions. So is she gonna ask her handmaid for help on Supreme Court decisions? If so, we really got to meet the handmaid and find out if she's qualified too. So, but they won't do any of that. Durbin just told you, they will lay down respectfully. The Democrats sicken me.
Well, look, they're gonna lay down respectfully because they refuse to attack her where it makes sense to attack her. The pro-corporate ideology is an issue, but it's an issue that the Democratic Party has as well. I mean, they've sided with corporations as well, and they know that making that argument is going to upset their donors. But on top of that, look, like they're just, even if they wanted to attack her correctly on the issues that matter, they're so bad at it. They're so rusty at it. I mean, look, if you want to be good with your donors, you can just focus on the one issue that I think is the least likely to play out well for Americans, and that's the Affordable Care Act. Amy Coney Barrett is gonna help repeal the Affordable Care Act. People aren't going to have healthcare protections that were given to them through that legislation. Yes, that legislation, that law ended up being incredibly flawed for a number of reasons that we've repeated on this show several times. But there are still important protections, like protections for people with pre-existing conditions, which will be gone as soon as the Affordable Care Act is completely repealed. And that is gonna be a disaster, especially at a time when we're still dealing with a pandemic. We're seeing numbers of coronavirus cases increase in dozens of states again. And we're about to enter flu season. We're about to enter the winter. When the holidays happen, when people are gonna gather, they're not gonna care about listening to social distancing guidelines. We're really in for it. And so that is an easy line of attack against Amy Coney Barrett. And I don't know why they're not effectively using that line of attack and instead talking about the size of her family. Who cares about the size of her family? I don't care about her personal decisions. I also don't want her personal choices to impact or dictate the lives of other women. So you want to attack her on what she could possibly do to reproductive rights? That makes sense as well, but you gotta frame it correctly. You gotta frame it strategically and not give Republicans ammo to then turn around and say that the Democratic Party is full of religious bigots. Because quite honestly, some of the rhetoric and discourse I've seen online does make them seem like religious bigots, and it's not a good look. Especially when they've put everything into identity politics for decades now.
But Anna, look, even if they did the Affordable Care Act thing, which I'd be surprised if they didn't go to that well eventually. I mean, how incompetent can they be? But honestly, at the end of the day, that isn't gonna matter at all because we're not trying to win a vote here. She doesn't have to win a popularity contest. All the Republican senators that they need have already declared loyalty to her. She's going to win the vote.
We need to get those senators out, though. You need.
But by that time it'll be too late. They'll have a 6-3 majority for the next 30, 40 years. It's over. It's over for the Supreme Court. And so, given how they stole the Merrick Garland seat, because they said it was a year before the election, you gotta let the people decide. This one they're gonna fill literally a week before the election. If you can't pull out every procedural stop to block that, you're losers. So I told you could block the debt ceiling, you could block continuing resolutions, you could call for impeachment after impeachment, which with the taxes story is easy. You could threaten to expand the courts, and you could actually deliver on that threat. The Democrats have taken all that off the table already because they're epic losers. But the last one is asking for unanimous consent on every vote. Can it slow it down by about a week? Maybe it could, but you gotta start right now. Why are you letting the Republicans do any votes in the Senate? No, ask for unanimous consent, make them come in the building and break and get 51 votes for every single vote, for every post office, for everything they have to do between now and the election. Take them off of their campaign circuit, to make them stop going to donor fundraisers, and they'll panic. But the Democrats don't want to do that because they also don't want to stop going on that donor circuit because they also have elections and they also are money grubbing, awful politicians. So they're gonna let her walk onto the Supreme Court. And from then on, everybody will always lie to you that there was nothing the Democrats could do. And that is nothing but a lie. They're choosing for the billionth time in a row not to fight. I can't stand them.
All right, post game is next. TYT.com/join. Become a member. See you there.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.